Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of PogChamps 3. In this video, we're going to be looking at the xQc versus Rubius match. So xQc I know is one of the favorites to win the entire PogChamps thing, so we'll see how he does today. This match is in Group B. By the way, in my last video in the coverage of Group C, I forgot to show the standings at the end. So there you go. These are the current standings. And without further ado, I think let's get right into the chess. You guys already see the first move. xQc was white. He played e4. Rubius played d5, the Scandinavian defense, which is a fine opening. xQc played e takes d5, the best response. And Rubius plays knight f6. This is kind of the modern way of playing the Scandinavian, which I actually used to play this as black, and I like it. I liked playing this a lot. I don't really like playing it so much anymore, but I do think it is a good opening for beginners and intermediates to be playing. So we'll see if it works out for Rubius. xQc plays knight c3, and Rubius goes for bishop g4. And this is, I think, Rubius was going for a variation of the Scandinavian called the Portuguese variation. However, this isn't exactly the Portuguese gambit. It's actually called the Portuguese gambit. Because the Portuguese gambit happens after d4 and bishop f4, f3, bishop f5, and c4, and this is the Portuguese gambit. So I think that's maybe what he was going for. Maybe he got a little confused with his prep, because here bishop g4 is just not a very good move at all, simply because of the move bishop e2 from white. And the thing is, you can't actually take this bishop. Well, actually, you can. It's probably the best move to take this bishop. You play bishop takes e2, but now when white takes back, now you can't actually take this pawn on d5, because if you go for knight takes d5, then we have queen b5 check, and it's a fork on the knight and the pawn. So c6 and queen takes b7, knight d7, for example, and queen takes c6. This is going to be a wonderful position for white. So you can't actually go for knight takes d5 after queen takes e2, and white's just going to have this nice developed queen and probably a nice center. You can't develop your knight to c6 here because of this pawn, so white may even end up a pawn at the end, which is why this bishop g4 move is not very accurate. But xQc did not go for bishop e2. He went for knight f3, which is a fine move too. But this does allow Rubius to take this d5 pawn. So knight takes d5, and queen takes d5. xQc probably shouldn't have traded these knights here. This kind of just allows Rubius to get his queen into the game. And yeah, you don't really want to be trading knights here for no reason here as xQc. You should really just play d4, control the center, prepare to develop your bishops. And yeah, you don't get anything out of this trade as xQc. So you're fine with these doubled pawns because they're on the queen side. You're not really going to be castling queen side anyway. You can castle king side instead. You'll have this half open b file for your rook, and also the c pawn will support your center. So you're kind of okay with taking these doubled pawns here, and you should really just play d4. That's my opinion on that. But xQc does go for the trade, so he plays knight takes d5. We have queen takes d5, h3, and bishop h5. Here Rubius, I think, should take this knight and now double xQc's pawns, because after queen takes f3, and g takes f3, now it's really an even position. No side has any pieces developed, except white now has these doubled f pawns, and so I think black is a little better just for this sole reason. White does have the bishop pair, but these doubled f pawns as well. So that's the imbalance. It's still probably going to be mostly even, but Rubius did not go for that. He went for bishop h5, which is totally fine too. xQc played g4, so he's probably not going to castle kingside this game. Rubius played bishop g6. We have d3, knight c6, bishop f4, and castles queenside. We have bishop g2 and e5. So grabbing the center, getting a tempo on this bishop, very good move, e5 from Rubius. We have bishop e3, so saving this bishop, and knight b4, which this move is not really the best, because white can simply play a3, and this knight has to go back, and it's not really doing anything. It's kind of a waste of a move. So white does play a3. xQc does go for a3. And instead of moving this knight, Rubius kind of tries to make things complicated. He plays e4. And his idea is, if you take my knight, I'm going to take your knight. However, things get really complicated. It ends up not too great for black in the end. So for example, a takes b4, e takes f3, bishop takes f3. You're now attacking this queen. And look at these bishops just aimed at black's king. This rook has this open file, which it's going to eat this a pawn very soon. So queen b5, for example, and just rook takes a7. Even after queen takes b4, you can just play king f1 and be totally fine. And white's pieces are all up in black's crib, and it's not going to be a fun time for black here. So yeah. This d4 move was not really, or excuse me, this e4 move was not really the best by Rubius for that reason, but that was really hard to see from both players. So xQc ended up not going for this a takes b4. He ended up just playing d4, and his idea is, okay, you can still take my knight, but then I'm going to take your knight. I think he was just preventing black from having this option to capture the d pawn, because black did have a lot of pieces defending this d3 square. So he could have, xQc was just preventing black from taking this d3 pawn, I think. However, this fails tactically. Now black, Rubius is totally winning. Rubius plays e takes f3, and after a takes b4, the problem is that was a trade, but now this bishop is hanging. We have f takes g2, and now xQc is down a whole piece. And he's going to have to move this rook g1, queen e4 now. We have queen e2, queen takes c2. So this battery was created. xQc needed to defend this c pawn again, which he did not do. So he lost another pawn there. We have queen takes c2 and bishop takes c2. So you don't really want to trade when you're down material, but xQc kind of had to do this queen trade because his king was going to be very exposed. You didn't want the queens on the board with your king very unsafe like this. We have rook takes a7, so go ahead and grabbing that pawn. Bishop takes b4 check, king e2, and rook h e8, so just getting Rubius getting this last piece into the game. We have rook a8 check and king d7 and rook takes d8. Once again, you don't really want to be trading when you're down material, but I can see kind of why xQc did it, because these rooks were just going to be too much if xQc let Rubius do what he wanted to with them. And it was going to be hard to get this rook back into the game on the a file because these bishops control too many squares on the a file. So I can see why he did it. And it really is a tough call whether to trade this pair of rooks or not. But he did it. So rook takes d8 and rook takes d8. And now xQc picks up this g2 pawn. Rook takes g2. We have bishop e4 gaining a tempo on the rook, and f3 gaining a tempo on the bishop once again. And here Rubius plays bishop f5, which I don't know. I really don't know what this is. I think this had to be a mouse slip. I didn't see the game live, so I'm not sure if it was. But this just feels like it had to be a mouse slip. Like he was going for bishop g6, and he accidentally played bishop f5 instead. And I don't know. So if you guys know, let me know in the comments. But this totally let xQc get back in the game, because after g takes f5, here Rubius probably should have played g6 to save the pawn, to save his pawn, but instead he played b6, and after rook takes g7, all of a sudden xQc is actually winning this game. So now we have bishop f8, one move too late, unfortunately. Rook takes h7 and c5, d takes c5, b takes c5. So now xQc, he's up some pawns. Now he wants to be the one trading, and now we have rook takes f7 check. So now xQc has 4 pawns, Rubius only has 1. We have king e8, bishop g5, rook d5, and rook f6. We have bishop e7, rook g6, saving your rook, defending the bishop. We have rook takes f5 and bishop takes e7 once again. xQc wants to get those trades in. King takes e7 and rook g7 check. We have king f6, rook c7, and this move is actually a blunder. Here you needed to play like rook g3, but this is very rook endgames can be very difficult for beginners. So I'm not surprised that xQc blundered here. And here, to take advantage of this, Rubius actually needs to play rook h5 to pick up this h-pawn. But yeah, you basically can't lose sight of this h-pawn. But Rubius did not go for that. Actually, no, he did go for that. I'm sorry. He did play rook h5. But after rook c6 check, xQc threw in a little check there. Rubius did not make the right move. He played king e5, and this is just a game-ending blunder because you allow this rook takes c5 skewer. You disconnect your rook from the pawn, and even worse, you put your king in a position where it cannot defend your rook after the check. So rook takes c5 check, and it's going to be all over for Rubius, it looks like. King f6, rook takes h5, and now the question is, will xQc stalemate? Because he is famous for his stalemates, I think. We have king g6 and rook b5, king f6, king e3, king e6, and f4. So xQc, he could do the king and rook checkmate, but he's looking to promote a pawn, just make things easy for himself. We have king f6, king e4, king g6, f5 check, king g5, king e5, king h6, and f6, continuing to push that pawn up the board. We have king g6, king e6, king h6, f7, king g7, king e7, now promoting that, or defending that promotion square. We have king g6 and f8 equals queen, nearly a stalemate. Luckily, the king has one square, king h7, and now xQc really needs to make sure he doesn't stalemate with a move like rook to g5 or king to f7. Luckily, he avoids both of those moves. He plays a check, rook to h5 check, and this is a great way if you don't want to stalemate your opponent. Just give a check, and if your opponent's in check, you can never stalemate. You can only checkmate. So xQc plays rook h5 check. Rubius plays king g6 check. We have a couple checkmate in ones here. We have queen f7, that would be checkmate. Also, queen h6 is a checkmate. xQc does not go for either of those. He goes for queen f5 check. And after king g7, he plays kind of the weird-looking queen f7 checkmate. I guess it's not too weird-looking, but he plays queen f7 checkmate. And the first game in this match goes to xQc. So, yeah, xQc, one of the favorites to win the entire PogChamps, wins his first game. So that's good for him. Maybe Rubius can bring it back. Maybe we'll go to an Armageddon game, but we'll just have to see. So I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or about this match. So make sure to like if you like this video, subscribe to make sure you're not missing out on more PogChamps 3 content. Check out my PogChamps 3 playlist too. And thank you for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.